Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, I want you to sit with a simple but powerful question that echoes from Halifax to Vancouver. From the Yukon Mountains to the busy streets of Toronto, are Canadians truly satisfied with Prime Minister Mark Carney? Because behind that question lies something far bigger than approval ratings or political gossip. It represents the pulse of a country, the economic anxieties of millions, and the growing debate over who actually benefits from the direction Canada is heading in. And tonight, we peel back that curtain. Canada stands at a crossroads. On one hand, the nation is being presented as stable, steady, and competently managed a place with a prime minister. Its global reputation as a financial expert is supposed to translate into economic security for everyday people. On the other hand, Canadians themselves are asking a different set of questions. If stability is so strong, why do so many households feel unstable? If leadership is so competent, why do major cities remain choked by unaffordable housing? If the economy is healthy, why are so many families struggling to breathe under the weight of rising costs? This growing contradiction is exactly why the question of satisfaction has become urgent. Public confidence is no longer shaped by speeches, headlines, or political branding. It is shaped by what Canadians are experiencing in their daily lives. A key, they are watching wages stagnate while corporate profits soar. They see interest rates used as blunt instruments crushing borrowers while doing little to curb the deeper structural issues that have been building for years. They see a political class that praises fiscal discipline but hesitates to discipline the very forces turning housing, groceries, energy, and basic living into commodities too expensive for the people producing the wealth of the country. And here lies the core issue. Canadians are not judging the Prime Minister on his resume. They are judging him on reality. Many are asking whether a leader trained in the world of global finance can genuinely understand the households living paycheck to paycheck. They wonder whether a system designed to protect markets can truly protect citizens. The dissatisfaction, where it exists, is not personal, it is systemic. People are tired of policies that promise long-term benefits while demanding short-term sacrifices from those who can least afford it. But this question, are Canadians satisfied, is more than an evaluation of one man. It is a reflection of something deeper, a population that is increasingly aware of the economic model shaping their lives. They see the growing gap between what ordinary people need and what political and financial institutions prioritize. They see that economic decisions made in boardrooms and government offices rarely reflect the daily realities in kitchens and living rooms across the country. And they are beginning to ask whether leadership without structural change can ever deliver true satisfaction. Yet, to be fair, some Canadians still see the Prime Minister as a steady-handed leader, capable of navigating international markets, representing the nation on the global stage, and maintaining a predictable economic environment. They applaud the efforts to stabilize inflation, attract investment, and maintain Canada's reputation as a safe economic harbor. But even supporters quietly acknowledge that without bold reforms, particularly in housing, taxation, healthcare capacity, and affordability, confidence will continue to erode. The truth is this: satisfaction is no longer a simple political measurement. It is a reflection of how deeply Canadians believe their democracy is listening to them. And increasingly, they are demanding leaders who confront structural inequities, challenge corporate concentration, and rethink an economic system that benefits too few at the top while squeezing too many in the middle and bottom. So I return to the question we began with. Are Canadians satisfied with Prime Minister Mark Carney? The answer is neither a simple yes nor a simple no. It is a signaler, polls telling us that Canadians are hungry for leadership that reaches beyond economic management and speaks directly to economic fairness. They want a government that treats affordability as a lived reality, not a talking point. They want a prime minister who governs not merely through numbers and projections, but through an understanding of the people those numbers represent. And if that desire is heard, truly heard, then Canada will not only answer this question, it will rise to meet its moment. Many Canadians today find themselves caught in a widening gap between the promises of economic stability and the daily realities they face. And this is where the first key point becomes unavoidable. People are questioning whether the Prime Minister's celebrated financial expertise has genuinely delivered the kind of affordability that families expect, deserve, and urgently need. The public was told that having a leader deeply familiar with global markets, banking systems, and monetary policy would naturally translate into steadier prices, or predictable economic conditions, and a stronger sense of financial security. But as Canadians look at their own budgets, their rent statements, their grocery bills, and the pressures building month after month, a growing number are asking a simple but piercing question. Asterisk, if this is stability, why does it feel so unstable? Asterisk, this disconnect is becoming a major point of political tension. Households across the country are feeling suffocated by costs that rise faster than their incomes, leaving them wondering whether the people at the top of the system are truly in touch with the realities at the bottom. The Prime Minister's background as a financial expert, once viewed as a major asset, now faces scrutiny not because of competence, but because Canadians are learning often painfully that expertise in global finance does not automatically mean relief for local families. And that realization has become a powerful hook in the national conversation. Promises of economic strength ring hollow when everyday life grows harder. One of the most immediate pressures comes from the housing market. Whether renting or trying to buy, Canadians are confronting prices that continue to break records year after year. Even with policy announcements and market interventions, the experience for most families remains unchanged. Asterisk, it is harder today to find an affordable home than it was 5, 10, or even 15 years ago. Asterisk, and so people naturally begin to ask whether the economic tools being used, interest rates, regulatory adjustments, market incentives are designed for them or designed for the stability of institutions that have long dominated Canada's economy. Then comes the pressure of everyday living. Grocery bills have become the clearest symbol of economic frustration. Families who once felt secure now find themselves budgeting down to the last dollar, cutting corners, and making sacrifices that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. When people see food prices rising faster than wages, they don't interpret that as a technical issue. They interpret it as a sign that the system is not working for them. And in a country known for its wealth of natural resources, its robust agricultural sectors, and its long-standing reputation for fairness, the sense of being squeezed feels deeply wrong. This is where the emotional core of the dissatisfaction takes shape. People do not expect miracles. They expect leaders to understand that economic success must be lived, not just measured. No chart or index can override the feeling of a shrinking paycheck. No economic forecast can overshadow the stress of choosing which bills to pay first. Canadians are increasingly aware that their frustration is not about temporary hardship. It is about structural imbalance. They see corporations reporting record profits while their own quality of life declines. They see policy debates that prioritize market signals over household reality. And they are beginning to question not just the decisions being made, but the assumptions behind those decisions. Okay? At the heart of this is a growing realization. Economic expertise is only valuable if it serves the people. Canadians are not looking for academic explanations or technical reassurance. They want leadership that centers their lived experience. Leadership that sees affordability as a matter of dignity rather than merely a policy challenge. Every rising bill becomes a reminder that the promise of economic stability has not yet reached their front door. And so, the dissatisfaction grows not out of anger alone, but out of disappointment. Because Canadians were told that this moment in history would be guided by someone uniquely capable of navigating economic storms. They were told that the country would emerge stronger, more secure, and more resilient. Yet today, many feel more vulnerable than ever, and that feeling, more than any statistic or political debate, shaping the national verdict on whether the Prime Minister's expertise is delivering what Canadians were promised. The question of whether Canadians are satisfied with their Prime Minister goes far deeper than any individual leader. And this is where the second key point becomes impossible to ignore. What is unfolding across the country is not just a political evaluation, it is a national awakening to the larger forces shaping Canada's economic and social direction. People are beginning to understand that their frustrations are not isolated problems, not temporary challenges, and certainly not simple communication failures. They reflect a deeper concern that the systems governing their lives, the political machinery, the financial structures, the corporate influence may no longer prioritize the needs of ordinary citizens. And that realization is becoming one of the most powerful shifts in public sentiment Canada has experienced in years. Canadians are asking a new and sharper question. Asterisk, is the system working for us, or are we working for the system? Asterisk, when people see their wages flatten while essential costs climb relentlessly, they start to suspect a pattern. When they see corporations thrive, even during economic downturns, they begin to question who the economy is actually built to serve. And when they see government after government promise affordability, fairness, and opportunity, yet deliver small changes that leave the biggest problems untouched, their dissatisfaction naturally moves beyond one leader and toward the structure itself. This is the hook that now grips the public. Dissatisfaction is no longer emotional, it is analytical. This shift becomes even more striking when Canadians observe how policies are discussed and prioritized. They notice how often political debates center around market stability, inflation expectations, investor confidence, and balanced budgets. Yet these conversations rarely translate into relief for struggling families. They watch as economic decisions are framed through the lens of market reactions rather than household realities. And slowly, Canadians begin to realize that the system itself may be calibrated to satisfy institutions long before it satisfies them. In that light, the question of satisfaction with the Prime Minister becomes a doorway into a larger, deeper conversation about power, interests, and representation. People see how corporate lobbying shapes legislation, how financial institutions influence regulatory decisions, and how large industries receive generous protections while ordinary consumers shoulder the weight of rising costs. They see that while political leaders come and go, the underlying priorities of the system remain remarkably consistent, always tilted towards stability for the powerful, even if that means instability for the rest. Okay? And that growing awareness transforms public dissatisfaction into something more profound, a demand for structural accountability. Hey, this is where the emotional energy intensifies. Canadians are not demanding perfection. They are demanding presence. They want leadership that speaks to them, not above them. They want policies built from the ground up, not the top down. And they want a government that recognizes a simple truth: the health of a nation cannot be measured by corporate profit margins or market indicators alone. It must be measured by the well-being of those who make the country run: the workers, families, and communities whose daily lives reveal the real state of the economy. The dissatisfaction, then, is not merely about whether one prime minister made the right decisions. It is about whether any leader operating within the current system can deliver the transformative changes Canadians are calling for. Many citizens now feel that no matter who holds office, the deeper economic structures remain untouched, and that feeling powerful, widespread, and rising creates a new level of political engagement. People are questioning fundamental assumptions: whether the economy should be driven by corporate interests or community needs, whether markets should dictate social policy, whether prosperity at the top can ever genuinely trickle down. The growing frustration is fueled by a sense of distance between decision makers and everyday life. Canadians see leaders emphasizing long-term projections, while households struggle to afford the present. They hear promises of future stability while living through current instability. And this creates a widening gap, not just between the public and politics, but between what Canadians expect from leadership and what leadership has been delivering. As more citizens connect these dots, they begin to see their dissatisfaction not as an isolated response, but as a logical conclusion. They recognize that the dissatisfaction is not a sign of cynicism, it's a sign of awareness. It is a sign of a population ready to question long-standing assumptions, ready to challenge entrenched systems, and ready to demand a model of governance that centers human needs, not just economic metrics. In this way, the question of satisfaction becomes a mirror, reflecting a broader national reckoning with how Canada is governed and who ultimately benefits from its policies.